Hello, my friends. Happy Monday. This is Tim at Alloutcoach. Over the weekend, I had a chance to watch a video that struck me, that just impressed me so much. It was over an hour. You can find it on the Humanocracy YouTube channel. Gary Hamel, a management guru that's worldly renowned. He's a business school professor from London as well. He interviewed Paul Polman, the CEO of Unilever, former CEO from 2009 to 2019. He's also the author of NetPositive and also a movement called Imagine that I think resolves the question for many of us, which is how can you design a business for purpose and for social change? Because I think many of us consider it a sort of a miracle. It's unfathomable to have profits, to have value for shareholders for decades to come, for example, while also being responsible socially and to the environment as well. Well, Paul Polman is the person, is the epitome of actually making this type of miracle come to life, my friends. And this is why I want to spend a little bit of time to discuss what he did to bring about change when he came in at Unilever, and what were some of his strategies that I think all of us can consider with this week in front of us, given the type of a world in which we live right now, in March 14th, 2022, the inflation that we're seeing, the sustainability that is now in question, the sustainability of our life or of our financial, economic responsibilities for many. And so I'm going to share a few statistics that were, I think, striking that Gary Hamel also asked Paul Polman to address as well. Okay. And so here is the first statistic. Okay. And it shows the ratio of CEO to frontline pay and how it has evolved over the last 6 or 7 decades. Actually, more than that. Yeah, probably about 8 decades, right? Going back to 1965, that ratio was about 15. It grew to about 45, and it's now at a whopping 320, which I think can be attributed to various different factors. But Paul Polman's view is what I'm going to highlight, which is that he believes that during the 1970s, 1980s, when the financial markets became more liberal, you had people that, and your organizations that were demanded to demonstrate their value to the shareholder as an outcome. And so unfortunately, a lot of the organizations across their industries, they started to cut down their R&D, to buy back shares, to start mass layoffs, which and also to reduce the brands in their pipelines, which was a vicious cycle that ultimately put many of these organizations at risk. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of the data demonstrates now that companies do not last for 60 years, as was the average decades ago in 1950s in the United States, for example. And now that time, that average time of viability of a life cycle of an organization has been reduced to about 17. So a threefold reduction in the lifespan of a company. Okay, which Paul Polman attributes to short-termism. Okay, a short-term strategy that has unfortunately placed many businesses at a disadvantage. All right, so that's my lesson number one here that I took from the video from over 1 hour. That was time well spent. Okay, one is the eliminating short short-termism, okay, is the first lesson. Now, let's look at more data, okay? If you ask people among many different organizations whether or not they feel that their purpose is fulfilled, 85% will say yes among the executives or senior managers, and only 15% feel that their purpose at work is fulfilled among the frontline workers. All right. And so there is a huge difference and also a distance between our rank and file and our executives, which I think also has contributed to the what I call the great revelation of why it is that people are choosing to stay home, be productive, and not go back to the offices. And if it's anyone that's suggesting or commanding their employees to come back and work in their office as this pandemic is now becoming manageable, it's really the executives. They want their businesses to work, the business owners, and they also feel fulfilled. They feel like they have stake in it, right? And so that is one of the reasons, in addition to the flexibility of work that now we've all subscribed to, as I mentioned on my previous All Out Coach lives. And so this data has been around now for a while, and I think we're still somewhat, products of the same kind of mentality, right? And this distance that is created in terms of purpose, okay? And that leads to job engagement. So if a person doesn't feel that their individual purpose is fulfilled, then they're probably not going to be as engaged or as productive at work. So what he did when he came into Unilever, which was actually struggling in terms of its shareholder value, is struggling in terms of its pipeline as well, was that the first thing he did was he changed the board to make it more representative of the stakeholders, of all the stakeholders that they served, as well as their own employees. While they only had Dutch and British nationals, natives on their board, he changed that completely to half men, half women, a more multinational representation on the board. And the company has grown now to have presence in over 400, in over 190 countries. It has 400 different household name brands. And that was his first step, really, right? To make sure that people increased their sense of inclusion, right? And then diversity as well. All right. Let's look at some more data, okay, that they shared on during this discussion. So this is a summary of the percentage of European companies at baseline in terms of just how many feel that they're flexible in terms of their workflow. 80% or more employees organize their own free time and schedule their tasks. Well, only 12% of EU companies have allowed for that type of flexibility. Incentive-based pays, encouraging to solve new problems, innovation, and a range of different markers here that you see involving employees. These were not one of the most popular types of topics among those surveyed, the business leaders. And so this all constitutes to this distance that needs to be shortened between the rank and file employees and their executives, which has contributed to this to the low job engagement scores. Now, if we look at the productivity, right, we have all the technology and so much technology that has allowed us to be more productive at work. right? And so this looks at the period from 1948 to 2018, where you see that while compensation has been increasing, it hasn't been increasing at a rate that is consistent with the productivity. We've become much more productive than we have before, but we haven't really recognized or acknowledged our valuable employees accordingly. And so when he came in, Paul Polman changed the incentive structure. He made the incentive structure the same for everyone. So he equalized equal incentive plans for all employees. What's his second approach? Right, where you didn't have one department that had, let's say, that was incentivized in a different way than another, even if they had the different functions, they all reported to a higher calling or to an outcome that they all felt that they related to. So what that ultimately did was that decreased, as Paul Polman says, the number of intersections, right? So it decreased the intersections between employees and departments. What does he mean by that? Well, you need a fluid traffic, right, of ideas. You need fluid exchange, collaboration, communication between different departments. And so the more intersections that you have, the more policies that you institute, the more restrictions you place, and also the more interdepartmental rivalries as well. So that was his approach, his mindset, to actually allow people to think a little bit more freely, implement ideas. When he came in first, I found interesting was that he talked about the fact that, yes, he had the qualifications, he had the title, but he needed to earn the respect of his employees. And so he spoke to a lot of various different levels of employees in order to get their insights, how their structure impacted their work. Okay. So if you think of collaboration, communication as traffic, right, of ideas, you have all the technology in the world that's improving your productivity, yet the policies sometimes are not consistent with the environment, with the ecosystem. This is what I've been covering on my previous LinkedIn Lives as well. And so I think it's very important for us to understand what that means in terms of just not just engagement and incentive, but also the metrics. So the metrics that he created were all a part of what he called the sustainable living plan. All right. And so that sustainable living plan addresses various aspects of that work-life continuum that allows people to be more stimulated to work, to fulfill their purpose, and to also ultimately to be more productive and to contribute to growth of their company. Right. So what did this sustainable living plan really entail? I want to just put it down here as another lesson number 4, so that you can see it, all of you who are joining. Well, the first part of that plan was environmental impact. How do all of our activities at Unilever impact the environmental change? Because of the domestic products that his company used, Unilever made sure to monitor how waste was being managed. Plastic in the ocean. They reduced the amount of plastic in the ocean. The degree to which Unilever contributed to climate change efforts and the Paris Agreement of decreasing that 1.5 degree increase in the temperature, global temperature, down to 0. Okay. So the environmental change was the first component of this overall purpose, or this the outcome that every employee was oriented towards. All right, and I'm going to put this down in as the discussion point, as a talking point here. Now, the second part of his sustainable living plan that took actually months and even years to institute was social change. What that meant was diversity and inclusion amongst its employees. Uh, a lot, people started to have training around it, not only in the board, which was more representative, but also among the employees. Training on diversity and inclusion. So he created a global, very engaged workforce. And then the third part of the sustainable living plan was creating livelihoods, increasing livelihood opportunities. This is the way he refers to it in the YouTube video, is opportunities for livelihood. Now, what does that mean? That meant at Unilever creating 5 million additional jobs. So he created 5 million new economic opportunities for people across the globe who wanted to become a part of the Unilever team, which I think is an incredible accomplishment. Now, did he accomplish everything that he embarked upon? No, he didn't, and he acknowledges that. However, he increased the quality of water, the renewable energy grid that was used, creating new sources of renewable energy, creating millions of new places for to eliminate toxic wastes, because he reminds Gary Hamel and Michele Zanini, who interviewed him, of the global problems and the global impact that the household products really had, and that he wanted the employees to be conscious of. There's 500 million children that go to sleep hungry to this day. There's children who do not live till the age of 5 because they're at risk of malaria and infections to this day in many parts of the world, because of how waste is being eliminated or mismanaged. The quality of the water supply. Okay, so these are all the global impact, global changes that Unilever took an active role in. Okay. Now, in terms of the organizational structure, did he really change the organizational structure? Well, yes, he did. He flattened the hierarchy. Okay, the organization from 11 down to 5 levels of hierarchy. So that also helped to really increase the collaboration, increase the communication, and decrease those intersections, as he calls it. Okay. So we spoke about the incentive pay. Well, what about the metrics? Well, now metrics, where all of the metrics, they really they derived from that sustainable living plan. He had those 3 targets that I talked about, right? The 3 parts of the sustainable living plan, which were: number 1, environmental change or impact; number 2, social change, again as a review; and number 3, increasing live opportunities for livelihood or jobs. All right, so that's I'm gonna make sure to repeat this just so that those who are joining can see this, right? And which he succeeded in. Now, the metrics. So there were 50 individual metrics that were derived from these three, that derived from the sustainable living plan. Okay, so across these three domains, there are 50 individual separate metrics that everyone was aware of. And so that brings me to the sixth strategy, which was communicate metrics of the sustainable living plan to all employees transparently. Okay, so metrics were absolutely transparent for everyone to see. That way, people knew where they stood, where they ranked, and how their work related to the global impact of their organization. All right. In the process, increasing their own livelihood as well. Because look, I'll share with you a real world story that was told to me by a physician years ago. He had a patient who had a terminal form of cancer, and he was given only 6 months to live. Well, what he did as a result was he started to sell his house. He wanted to have a particular lifestyle in his last remaining months of life. He moved from the suburbs, from the from the village, from his town into the city with his family. He started to spend like had never spent before, and he lived to the fullest. Well, 6 months went by, he was still alive, and he met with a doctor, and his doctor, after testing him, running series of tests, he told him, well, look, your cancer has regressed. You're going to live. To which the patient had a very interesting response. He said, wow, that's great, doctor, but what is my life worth now that I don't have any money? I don't have a house that I sold. What is the real value of my capital, of my human capital, of my life? So the reason why I share this example is that our life has to have a certain level of sustainability for that spans our work and all our different responsibilities, that Paul Polman was very conscious about. And that's why he's this type of a CEO that allowed this miracle of designing a business for purpose and social change a reality. So he created a reality out of what was unfathomable. This lofty goal, right, at Unilever. Now, so I'll close this live here by encouraging you to watch his YouTube video. It's about an hour video on the Humanocracy YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Humanocracy YouTube channel. Subscribe to my Alloutcoach channel as well, my friends, because Paul Polman, Unilever, is an incredible case study. He has a book, again, called NetPositive. And also, he has a movement that he's started called Imagine. Look it up on the internet, guys, my friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for watching All Out Coach this Monday. These lives are going to be aimed at inspiring you for the week and the weekend ahead. I'm going to aim to have them on Mondays and Fridays in the morning before work as much as possible. And with that, I wait for your comments, your reactions, my friends. Have a great week ahead. All the best. Thanks.